Good day, students. It's class time, your daily space for CSEC and CAPE students. Watch lessons in real time on Television Jamaica's YouTube channel or One Spot Media. We are also live on gojamaica.com. If you have questions on today's subjects, you can send them to Television Jamaica's Facebook page or Instagram at television_Jamaica using the hashtag TVJClassTime. I am Alethea Brown, and I will be guiding you through CSEC English Literature. Today's lesson will be based on the book To Kill a Mockingbird. For this session, we will 1. Discuss the relationship between setting and character traits. 2. Identify ways by which characters can be analyzed. 3. Infer traits from the presentation of a main character in the novel. And hopefully by the end of this discussion, you would have developed a heightened sense of appreciation for the commonalities and differences in our human experience. Before I begin, let me hope you're all doing well at home. I know adjusting to online classes might be a little bit challenging, but guess what? This is our new normal, so we have to make the best of it and maximize on every minute of every day. Having said that, let's get into the meat of the matter. So as I had said before, today we are going to be talking about character traits as reflected in the novel To Kill a Mockingbird. I will start off with a quick quiz. And this quick quiz is going to test how much you recall from the novel or if you have read the novel at all. So what I'm going to do is to give you a description of characters from the story, and then you're going to guess which characters those descriptions fit. Are you ready? Let's go. The first description. They never took anything from anyone they can't pay back. They never took anything off anybody. They got along with what they have. Which character does this description befit? Did you say the ULs? Not exactly. The Cunninghams. Very good. Next description. An unknown entity, the mere description of whom it was enough to make us behave ourselves for days on end. Which character is this one referring to? Boo Radley. Excellent. Last one. His maddening superiority was unbearable these days. He didn't want to do anything but read and go off by himself. Can you recall? Very good. Jem. Excellent. So I see that you have been reading the text, and that's very important because whatever analysis you make of whatever aspect of the story, you have to read the text in order to get your evidence to support whatever arguments you present. Have you ever thought of ways that we can describe people, ways that we form opinions of people? Think about your everyday life. Somebody introduces you to somebody new. What's the first thing you look at? Oh, are edges pretty? Yes, maybe. But guess what? There are other dimensions to a character or an individual than just edges or name brand or the Gucci purse or the bag that he or she is carrying. And that's what we're going to be examining today. So I'm going to be sharing with you a poem that I've written. And after the poem, I want you to do 2 things. I want you to, 1, try to pinpoint ways that we can use to analyze a character. And 2, I want you to see if the poem matches any of the characters that you would have encountered from the novel To Kill a Mockingbird. Are you ready? Here we go. The title is Your Definition of Me. How do you sculpt your definition of me? Is it about what I do or don't do, or about your transferred perception of humanity? How do you sculpt your definition of me? Is it an assessment of my character through the eyes of those who think they know what I should be? Is it in my choice to approach life a certain way that may not fit in with what the masses have to say? Perhaps it's because I do not bend over and play dead, because I question rules and values and choose my own moral path instead. Or is it because society is built a certain way, but others call me names because I do not conform to the quote-unquote norm of the day. Perhaps my character is judged by all of these, but at the end of the day, who really takes the time to know me? Okay, you can hold the applause. I will be outside the studios for autographs after this. All right. On a more serious note now. 1, were you able to associate any particular character from the story with this poem? All right, hold that answer because I'm not ready for my character reveal as yet. Secondly, were you able to identify any ways by which we can assess a character based on what the poem was saying? Well, let's delve into that. Based on the poem, I want you to write down 3 ways that we can assess a character. Did you come up with actions? Definitely. We can assess a character by his or her actions. And the part of the poem that says, do they judge me by what I do or don't do, would speak to that. Yes. And if we think of our society on the whole, think of our politicians, for example, how do we assess them? We assess them by their actions, by what they do or don't do. That's how we form our opinions of them. So we can assess a character by the type of actions he or she portrays in the story. Did you say through our personal beliefs and perceptions? Very good. Sometimes we have preconceived notions of how people should behave. And as a result of that now, we foist ourselves and our beliefs upon them. So we think that they should be operating in a certain way, and if they do, we appreciate them. If they don't, we don't appreciate them. So that's another way, through our personal beliefs or perceptions. We also assess characters through the perceptions of others. Think about this. You're going into a new class, and you hear of this teacher. You have never met the teacher before, but you conjure up their ideas about the teacher long before you even meet him or her. Why? Because others probably told you something about the teacher. So that's another way. We also assess characters by their choices or approaches. Yes, the types of actions they choose to do combined with their approach to life can be one way that we assess them. And so even in your own space, it is very important for you to make wise choices and to be careful in the way you approach life, because most times that's how a character is judged. And of course, we can look at the character's value systems. What does he or she stand for? What does he or she make a big case of in life? Is it the petty things? Is it something more important, something that is going to add value to his or her life? Then this is another way that we can assess a character in a story. Very good. Having said all of that now, there is another way that we can assess a character, or even before we begin to make an assessment of a character, it is important that we pay attention to the setting, the context within which that character is operating. So the 5 points that we mentioned before, please bear them in mind. But now we're going to look at how the setting impacts the character. Let me just encourage you to use your imagination for a minute or two. Picture yourself in a bank. Are you able to do that? So you're standing in a line, you're waiting patiently to go up to speak to the teller. Then picture yourself in a marketplace. Would you say that the personality you demonstrate in the bank is the same personality you demonstrate in the marketplace? Like, really? I don't think so at all. When I go to the market, I don't stand in line and say, oh, miss, I'm just waiting to buy that nice fruit you have there. No. Not to say I'm rowdy or anything. It's just that I take on a different personality. So in order for you to make an assessment of my character, you have to put me in a particular setting, a particular location. You have to look at me through particular lenses or in a particular context. And it is very important. So the character that we are going to be looking at today is operating within a certain context. And that is how we are going to form our impressions or assess that character, which I'm not revealing as yet. So that takes us now to the setting of To Kill a Mockingbird. One of the things I must point out here is that To Kill a Mockingbird, it reflects the real-life experiences of Harper Lee. So it's almost an autobiographical experience that Harper Lee is communicating to us. And To Kill a Mockingbird is set against the backdrop of Alabama during the 1930s. Now, I know some of you would have researched it already, so this is just to refresh your memories. And if you haven't researched it yet, then you can definitely learn something today. The 1930s Alabama was characterized by what was termed as the Great Depression. And the Great Depression was an economic decline because of the crash of the stock market during that time. Because the stock market crashed, we realized that there were several spin-offs from that. One of the main spin-offs was a decline in the economy. Yes, people had no money. Think about this. Factories had closed. Industries had closed. Many banks had closed. People lost their savings. So as a result of that, there was little or no money to go around. And we realized that that would have caused a lot of strikes, that would have contributed to people, feeling very depressed. And probably that's how the term the Great Depression came about. It was a depression of the economic state as well as a general depression on people. And it affected places like Alabama as it did many other places of the world. We realized that during this time period also there were disenfranchised groups. And among those disenfranchised groups were the blacks. What do I mean by disenfranchised groups? These were people who were not given the rights and privileges that others in the society were given. So blacks, for example, could not enjoy some of the privileges that the whites enjoyed. Think about a common thing as a public bathroom, for example. The whites and the blacks did not share a common space. And why? Because there were laws that stipulated that blacks had a particular space and whites had a particular space, and at no time were these two supposed to meet. So we realized that there were disenfranchised groups. In addition to that, the living conditions were poor for some people. Because, of course, of the economic decline, many persons could not pick themselves up, brush themselves off, and start over. So we realized that many even lived in the squalor. And then there was the enforcement of the Jim Crow laws that I hinted at before, where there was segregation, and this segregation was lawful. So there was nothing wrong with the blacks being pushed to the back of a bus and being told to get up when a white person entered the bus to give them that seat. It was legal. So this is the backdrop against which Harper Lee sets up the story To Kill a Mockingbird. And then we are going to be looking now to see if any of these real-life situations are reflected in the actual novel. Remember, it is a time of economic depression, as we had looked at before. We also saw where it is a time where some groups, the blacks in particular, were disenfranchised. We see where the living conditions were very poor. And we also see where there was an enforcement of the Jim Crow laws that set a barrier between the whites and the blacks. We're going to take a pause right here and take a quick break. Stay with us.
Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or the nearest health center and share your travel history. The flu and coronavirus can kill. Let's protect each other. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Hi there, I'm Simon Preston from TVJ. Thank you very much for watching our YouTube channel. To see our latest videos and also to see live events, click here. To see our full videos on onespotmedia.com, click here. Thank you very much.
COVID-19 tip. Protect yourself and others from getting sick by washing your hands after coughing or sneezing, when caring for the sick, before, during, and after you prepare food, before eating, after toilet use, when hands are visibly dirty, and after handling animals or animal waste.
Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or the nearest health center and share your travel history. The flu and coronavirus can kill. Let's protect each other. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Hi there, I'm Simon Preston from TVJ. Thank you very much for watching our YouTube channel. To see our latest videos and also to see live events, click here. To see our full videos on onespotmedia.com, click here. Thank you very much.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were looking at ways by which we can analyze a character. We also established the background of the novel To Kill a Mockingbird because the setting plays an important role in the manner in which we go about assessing a character. So we were at the point where we were looking at the actual Alabama society that forms the background to the Mockingbird story. We said that at the time of the story set, Alabama was experiencing economic decline. There were disenfranchised groups in the sense that blacks and whites did not have the same privilege. We see where there were poor living conditions and there was enforcement of the Jim Crow laws, which stipulated a division between the blacks and the whites. My question for you is, having discussed that, can you see any elements of the real Alabamian society being reflected in the novel To Kill a Mockingbird? Let's see. The setting, the actual setting now of To Kill a Mockingbird is described as a small town where people share an intimate social relationship. If you recall the first chapter of the novel, Scout tells us that Maycomb, which is a fictional town in which the story is set, was a lethargic place. She said there wasn't much to do, and even if there was anything to do, there wasn't much to do it with. There was nowhere to go, no money to buy anything, and not much to buy anyway. Does that sound like what was happening in the real Alabama? Yes, it does. So the people share a very close relationship, and Stephanie Crawford makes this very evident. She knows everybody's business. Can you relate to that? Of course. In our own communities, we know when somebody moves in, we know when somebody moves out because there is that intimate relationship that is shared among the community members. It's the same kind of experience that the Maycomb people are experiencing. As I said before, the town seems very lethargic and docile. But can we say that this is the true reflection of Maycomb? Later, we are going to realize that the calmness that initially depicts Make Home is not necessarily what holds through for the community, but we will get to that. We see a town riddled with racism. Typically, Make Home is made up of an aging community, an aging generation, and these people hold to certain ideals. So they are from the school where whites and blacks are supposed to be seen as separate. As a result of that, there are racial tensions in Make Home. And we see those being played out, particularly when it came on to the scene of Tom Robinson's trial. We saw the racism just rearing its head in so much that people got hurt. All right? We see evidence of classism. And the classism would come about because, remember now, because the country was going through, or the county rather, was going through that period of depression, the economic depression, then there were some persons who didn't have it at all. There were some persons who were just managing enough, and then there were those who were in an upper class. So we have the classism coming out there. And we also see where blacks are marginalized and treated with much condescension. So can you see how Harper Lee integrates what was happening in the real Alabama society into the novel? Very good. So that is a setting. That is the background now that's going to form our discussion for an analysis of the main character that we'll talk of today. And that main character is Atticus. So our feature today is going to be on Atticus. I want you to write 3 sentences about Atticus based on how you perceive him. Remember, that's one of the ways that we can assess a character, by our own perceptions of him. Write 3 sentences about Atticus, and I want you to keep those 3 sentences because by the time we get to the end of our discussion, I want you to see if you still have the same perception of Atticus. So we're going to be looking at what it is that drives Atticus's actions. What are his motives? How does he respond to society in terms of his value system? How do others perceive him? And what does Atticus represent in the story? Remember, initially, we looked at the fact that a character is more than what is seen on the physical. It is an in-depth analysis that we're going to do to see how Harper Lee sets up Atticus in the story and what he represents in To Kill a Mockingbird. So, what drives Atticus? Atticus chooses to do what he thinks is right. And we see this in the case of the Tom Robinson trial. He chose to defend Tom Robinson. At one point, Scout asked him if somebody else could have done it. He said yes. So she went on to ask him, because we know Scout is very inquisitive, why did you take the case? He said if he did not take the case, then he could not speak to them again to correct them as to what is wrong or right. He said for him this was a personal experience and he wanted to do something that his children could look up to him for and that he would feel confident in himself that he has done the right thing about. He tries to live an exemplary life for his children. Think about the case when the children were playing the game, when they were mocking Boo Radley in that game, right? What did he do? He told them to stop playing the game because Atticus believes that his children should not be putting Boo Radley's story out there for the entire community to see. In fact, that's what he said. He treats everyone with respect and common decency. Think of the time when Jem invited the Cunningham boy home. Now, we know that the Cunninghams, I'm thinking they were smelly. I'm thinking their clothes would have been disheveled because they were one of the groups that was strongly hit by the depression. But when he went home, Atticus just treated him as if he was one of family. And he accommodated him, had a discussion with him around the table about farming and all of this. So he was very accommodating. What are Atticus's motives? By a motive, I mean the desire that drives a person's actions. So Atticus uses his position as lawyer to accord justice to the marginalized, as we see in the case of Tom Robinson. He believes that every individual should be given a fair chance of justice. Whether this can be accomplished in his context is another story, but he tries. He's driven by the desire to uphold and be motivated by his personal beliefs. There are certain ideals that Atticus holds on to, and nothing is going to deter him from holding on to those ideals. That is what makes him who he is. He is driven by the desire to abide by his own moral code, and he passes this on to his children. So they have to be respectful of adults. They have to treat everybody with respect. Think of when Aunt Alexandria came and the scout was asking Atticus a question. But Aunt Alexandria answered the question, and Scout was like, "But I wasn't talking to you." Atticus said, "No, apologize, apologize." And he would not answer Scout's question until Scout apologized to her aunt. He believes in respect. He believes in the need to reverse the residue of the historic past. Atticus realized that they had been licked 100 years before. That's what he said. But it doesn't mean that people cannot try to be better. And so he tries to be better, and he tries to allow his children to be better. Atticus' response to society. That's another way we can assess the character of Atticus. He is not drawn into the idiosyncrasies of Mako. So yes, there are racial tensions. Yes, there are people like the boss who keep calling him the N-word, and when she cannot catch him, she lashes out at his children in so much. We know what Jem did to her flowers as a result of that. But Atticus is not drawn into that. He believes that people should be treated with decency, and he himself tries to act as a decent individual. He does not ascribe to racist or classist tendencies, and he treats his children as such. He sees value in the mockingbirds. Remember at one point when the children got the play guns, he said they can shoot any birds they wanted to shoot, but they are not to take a shot at the mockingbirds, because these mockingbirds do nothing but make music. So he believes in the figure of the mockingbirds. He portrays tolerance for people. And Atticus understands that his society has ills, but he doesn't get drawn into those ills. He is what we would call the odd one out, the misfit, but it's a misfit in a good way. How do people perceive Atticus? Because this is one of the main things, especially in our society. How do people perceive others? Well, the perceptions of Atticus vary in the story. We have people like Miss Maudie Atkinson, for example, who just laud Atticus. And she says that Atticus is the same in his house as he is on the street. So Atticus is a transparent character for Miss Maudie Atkinson. She realizes that Atticus tries to maintain certain standards, and he imposes those standards on his children. But then there are people like Mrs. DeBose, who believe that Atticus is an N-word lover and that he's nothing but the N-word trash, right? So perceptions of Atticus differ. And then when it comes on to Bob Ewell, after Atticus totally dismantled him in the court, insinuating that he was the one who raped his own daughter, we know that Bob Ewell has it out for Atticus. In fact, if we were to go on what Stephanie Crawford said, she said, Bob Ewell said to Atticus, "It's not going to go down like this. There will be a price to pay." And then we see people like the blacks who also appreciate Atticus, because after he tried to defend Tom Robinson to the best of his ability, even though he knew he was going to lose the case, we see where the blacks, they just showered Atticus with gifts. They brought chicken and all sorts of foods. In fact, Atticus told Calpurnia to tell them not to bring anything more, because they had brought so much already, just to show him that they appreciated his efforts. And then now we can look at what it is that Atticus represents in the story, because Atticus is a symbolic character. So Atticus can be seen as the voice of reason in the story. What does this mean? It means that he tries to instill in the people of Maycomb a different side, a different way of seeing things. He tries to tell them that, listen, there is another way. There is no need to be aggressive. There is no need to be abrasive. He tries to tell them that we can rise above this. I'll give you a typical example. After Atticus lost the case, the one that when he was defending Tom Robinson, Bob Ewell was extremely irritated. He lashed out at Atticus, and when he didn't get a hold of Atticus, what did he do? He attacked Atticus's children. Now, before the attack on Atticus's children, Bob Ewell made a threat at Atticus. He even spat on Atticus, And all Atticus did, according to Stephanie Crawford's version of the story, was to wipe the spittle from his jacket and move on. And then Jem and Scott became so very flustered because they're saying, Dad, you're going to be endangered, or Atticus rather, because they didn't call him Dad. We are in danger and we are scared for you. Atticus said to them, put yourself in Bob Ewell's position. Can you imagine that? This is the same man who is threatening him. This is the same man who just spat on him. And Atticus is saying, put yourself in Bob Ewell's position. I totally dismantled him in the court. I made him seem as if he's the villain. And Atticus definitely understood where Bob Ewell was coming from. So Atticus is the voice of reason in the story. He represents morality in a setting or environment that has aggressive undertones. So when Mrs. DuBose was flaring up and behaving in an ill-mannered way and she wanted Jem to apologize, Atticus sent Jem to apologize. And Jem could not understand why it was that Atticus was accommodating this old woman. Atticus said he saw in her courage and he wanted to teach Jem that courage. He wanted to let Jem know that there was another way because Mrs. DuBose died beholding nothing to anyone at all. So he sees the good in everything and in everybody. He represents the conscience that Maycomb seems to lack. And of course, Atticus can be looked at as one of the mockingbird figures in the book. Remember, he said that mockingbirds do nothing but make music. Atticus tried to make music in Maycomb. He tried to get the community to realize that people have rights, that people are humans. He tried to get everybody to understand that, listen, we do not have to condescend. We do not have to treat people as if they are lesser entities. So you will recall the case when he went down to the courthouse because a gang was going to kill, they were going down there to kill Tom Robinson. Atticus took his light bulb and he went down there and he camped out in a bid to defend Tom Robinson against the mob. And we know how that fared out where Scout intervened and she also tried to show them that, this is not the way. So Atticus represents the figure of the mockingbird. He was chastised, he was attacked, his children were attacked, but still he held on to what he believed and he saw the good in everybody. So, having discussed all of that, we have taken a comprehensive look at Atticus. What are some words now that we could use to describe Atticus? I have come up with a few, and I'm going to ask that you also try to add some more to the list, okay? And remember, initially there was a question that I had given you. What were your own perceptions of Atticus? Have your perceptions changed? Do you want to add anything? Is there any other information that you can add now to substantiate your claims about Atticus? Think about it. In the meantime, these are some words that we can use to describe Atticus. He is humane. He appreciates humanity. He sees people as people. Atticus does not rely on anybody's perception or interpretation of another human being. He realizes that everybody deserves a chance to live and to live the best life possible in the Maycomb context. And he does not ascribe to whatever else it is that the Maycomb people are saying. Atticus is reputable, and we see this in the way he executes his duties. He is a lawyer, he's an upstanding member of the community, and basically respected by everybody. Well, saving for Mrs. DuBose, who I think died, thinking that Atticus should never have defended Tom Robinson. He's modest. And I remember one particular instance where he demonstrated his modesty. Scout said to him, Atticus, are we rich? He said, no, Scout, we are poor. And I mean, it's not as if Atticus is the richest because, as I said, everybody is suffering from the decline in the economy. But Atticus is a little bit above the rest. But he said to Scout, no, they are not rich. He's very perceptive. So Atticus can discern things. That's how he knew how to find himself at the station when the mob was about to kill Tom Robinson. He knew that something terrible was going to go down, and so he went down there and camped out in a bid to save Tom Robinson's life. We can also see Atticus as a compassionate person, and we see this in the way he treats Mrs. DuBose's case. he realizes that this old woman, she has gone through a lot. You know, society has dealt her a hard blow. And so he understood where she was coming from in terms of the anger that she was meting out against his children. Atticus is very honest. Recall the incident where Scout was asking her uncle about, you know, that sexual connotation, and the uncle tried to divert, and he went all around the bush trying to answer that question. What did Atticus say to him? He says, for heaven's sakes, when a child asks you a question, answer it. He's very honest. He tells his children the plain truth. He hides nothing from them, and because of that, they can appreciate him. He's courageous, and we see this in the case of the Mad Dog incident. The only person who could put that situation to rest was Atticus. And when Calpurnia called him, he came and he dealt with Mr. Tim Johnson. Atticus is also morally driven, and we have looked at how he maintains his moral ideals and how he tries to get his children to uphold those moral ideals. Can you add any other words to this description? Try. And ensure that whatever words you choose, they can be justified with examples from the text. Okay, now having discussed all of that, we are going to put the description of Atticus in a nutshell, but we are going to do it in a fun way. So it's dub poetry time. Now I want your input here. I'm going to give you the first line, and you're going to complete the next line by supplying a rhyming word for the end word in my first line. Does that make sense? All right, let me show you. Let's do a test run. Atticus is only a man. Your line is, but he has insight and a strategic plan. Very good. So each time I pause, you'll supply a word that rhymes with the previous word at the end, all right? Let's see if we can get a rhythm going here, and I hope I can remember the word. So here we go. Atticus is only a man, but he has insight and a strategic plan. He's guided by morality and integrity. All right, let's start again. I totally messed that up. Let's go again. Atticus is only a man, but he has insight and a strategic plan. He's guided by morality and integrity. The good in others he tries to see. Very good. Many love Atticus's praises swell. Others detest him like Bob Ewell. Atticus lives by his moral code. Respect for everyone, whether young or old. To be kind to the mockingbirds is a must, and this pretty much sums up Atticus. Very good, very good. Excellent. Now to sum up. Today we discussed the relationship between setting and character traits. We also identified ways by which a character can be analyzed. We inferred character traits from the presentation of the main character in the novel. In this case, it was Atticus. And I hope by now you would have developed a heightened sense of appreciation for the commonalities and differences in our human experiences. We might be worlds apart. To Kill a Mockingbird was set in the 1930s, but even in our society today, we can still see elements of the Mockingbird, if not definitively, at least to an extent, we see elements. So we are not so different after all. We are people of humanity who share similar experiences. But of course, you know, I couldn't leave without giving you your assignment. So here is your assignment. Atticus Finch is one of the characters that pushes against societal issues with kindness and acceptance. What I want you to do is write a detailed description of Atticus and show how his personality can be seen as a challenge to his society. Let me repeat that. Write a detailed description of Atticus and show how his personality can be seen as a challenge to his society. Enjoy what you're doing and ensure that whatever points you choose to write about, they can be substantiated with evidence from the text. And guess what? At the end of the day, literature is life. So I hope that you will live, breathe, and think literature, because it can open up dimensions to your thinking. It can show you another aspect of life. It can give you so much experience. People talk about vicarious experience. And the next time you go to assess or analyze an individual, look beyond the physical An individual is more than what you see on the outside. He or she is made up of much more substance than that. All right? So enjoy what you're writing and ensure that if you have any questions, you feel free to share them with us. Well, that's it for CSEC English Literature. Up next, CSEC Theatre Arts.